Okay, let's just jump right into this. What do you think is the longest pre-mechanical earthwork ever built in human history? Now, if you're like most people, you're probably picturing the Great Wall of China, right? Or maybe some massive project built by the Romans. But actually, the real answer is in West Africa. It's hidden within this incredible history of mind-blowing engineering, global diplomacy, and some of the most brilliant art ever created. 16,000 kilometers. Yeah, you heard that right. That is the staggering estimated combined length of the ancient earthworks and boundary traces across the Benin Empire, located in modern-day Nigeria. I mean, it's a scale that literally shocks the imagination when you really think about it. So, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to unpack the fascinating history behind that absolutely massive number.
The Kingdom of Benin, Golden Age to Digital Age. We'll be tracing a huge, overarching narrative today, taking us from a 15th century powerhouse through its complex international relationships all the way to an incredible modern digital rebirth.
Part 1. Rise of Ewuare the Great, from exile to empire.
So before he was known as the Great, Ewuare was actually Prince Ogun, and he'd been exiled from the city while his brother Eweka took the throne. The historical traditions here read almost like an epic movie script. During his exile, Ogun sneaked back into the city, was chased, and literally had to hide in a dried-up well. And he was only saved because a loyal enslaved man named Edo lowered a ladder down so he could escape into the bush. Well, years later, Ogun successfully returns, disguised as a dancer at a market festival of all things. He defeats his brother and is finally crowned Oba around 1440. And here's the coolest part. He never forgot the guy who saved him. He deified his loyal friend, and the entire nation's name, Edo, actually honors that very man.
Once he was officially in power, Ewuare completely transformed Benin. We're talking going from a loose, kind of scattered kingdom into a highly centralized empire. He completely rebuilt the massive palace right at the heart of the city. He also introduced this new title, the Adaiken, or Crown Prince. This was absolutely crucial because it firmly established lineal succession and dialed back the power of the traditional kingmakers. He reorganized the fabric of the city itself into corporate craft guilds and set up formal palace departments. And of course, he expanded the military into a full-standing war system, which ultimately allowed him to capture over 200 towns and villages.
Part 2. The massive Benin Moats. Engineering a fortified capital.
Now, the physical manifestation of all this newly centralized power was just staggering urban engineering. To give you an idea, in 1508, the Portuguese explorer Duarte Pacheco Pereira vividly described the city. He noted that it had, quote, no wall but is surrounded by a large moat, very wide and deep, which suffices for its defense. That right there perfectly captures the incredibly unique defensive structures the Edo people were building.
Because, these weren't your standard European stone walls. They were called aya. These absolutely massive linear earthworks made up of a deep ditch and a ridiculously steep earth bank, known as a dump rampart. The inner city aya was built around 1460 during Ewuare's reign, and it was a total defensive masterpiece. The ramparts reached up to 9 meters high. Imagine trying to climb a steep, sandy avalanche of a wall, all while facing down Benin soldiers armed with spears. Yeah, for sure, not gonna happen.
97 days. Researchers estimate it only took a labor force of about 5,000 men working 10-hour days to complete that massive inner ditch in a single dry season. Let that sink in for a second. That is just a mind-blowing data point that really shows off the immense civic organization and tight coordination of Ewuare's empire.
Part 3. Portuguese diplomacy and trade. An unprecedented cultural synthesis.
So, with this fortified, thriving capital, Benin enters this brand new era of global contact. And when the Edo and the Portuguese cultures met, this striking synthesis happened between native Edo religious practices and introduced Catholic rituals. Oba Ewuare, who was a successor of Ewuare, even built the Akbakpava Cathedral in the 16th century. Over time, things just naturally blended together. Like the Catholic evening mass kind of morphed into daily palace ceremonies. The Portuguese Maltese cross got adopted as a palace motif. Even the native Ohenza priests took on attributes that closely mirrored early Catholic bishops. It's fascinating.
And this relationship permeated everyday life too. It left a huge linguistic footprint. Because the Portuguese were introducing new physical items, the Edo language just adapted. Oranges became alimo, spoons became kuye, even pineapples became ijibo, and ibo is actually a root word referring to the white man. It's a great example of how everyday Portuguese words and concepts seamlessly integrated into Edo culture.
And historical research, like the studies you'll find in the KIU Journal of Humanities, really highlights that this initial era was defined by mutual diplomatic exchange. We're talking official ambassadors being sent back and forth between the Oba and the King of Portugal. It was a genuine partnership of trade and curiosity, which is, quite distinct from the violent imperialism that would characterize later centuries in Africa.
Part 4. The Brass and Ivory Legacy, Fueling a Golden Age of Art.
Now, this rich international relationship directly fueled a massive golden age of art. Trade with the Portuguese brought this huge influx of brass right into the kingdom. And the Royal Egon Guilds, remember those guilds that were formalized? They took this imported raw material and cast some of the most sophisticated brass plaques and figures in human history. Meanwhile, the carvers were creating these exquisite Afro-Portuguese ivory salt cellars and hunting horns specifically designed for European royalty. The art itself essentially became a documentary record. It frequently featured images of the exact Portuguese soldiers and merchants they were doing business with.
Think about the famous ivory festec mask, which represents Queen Idia. Literally carved into the tiara of the mask itself are 11 repetitive heads of a 16th century European Catholic bishop. I mean, it is just a perfect, tangible emblem of how deeply Benin incorporated Portuguese imagery right into their most sacred royal artifacts. Part 5, Digital Benin Today, the 1897 Turning Point and Modern Reclamation.
But then we hit a historical turning point. In February of 1897, a British punitive expedition entered the kingdom, and this event abruptly ended the golden age of the Benin Empire. The physical manifestation of their entire history, the royal representational arts, the brass plaques, the ivories that recorded all their lineage and diplomatic ties, they were looted, and subsequently, they were translocated all over the world. 5,304. That is the exact number of historical Benin objects that researchers have meticulously cataloged today. The sheer scale of this dispersal is just monumental. Those 5,304 artifacts, they are currently scattered across 139 different institutions, spread far and wide across 21 different countries globally. Think about that. The historical record of an entire civilization was fractured and spread across the globe.
And as you can imagine, tracing the complex provenance of thousands of widely scattered objects is a monumental task. It's like a giant puzzle. It requires intense, ongoing academic and digital research. Teams have to sift through old colonial archives, auction records, and museum catalogs just to piece together exactly where everything ended up.
But that brings us to the incredible achievement of the Digital Benin project. This platform has successfully brought these dispersed artifacts back together in a single, easily accessible digital space. And it does so much more than just catalog them. It virtually reunites these global objects with the Edo oral histories, the specific language catalogs, and the historical mapping of the kingdom itself. Basically, it gives the objects their original context back.
So what does this all mean for the future? How might digital tools reshape our understanding of dispersed ancient histories? The story of the Benin Kingdom, from Ewuare's Great Moats to the brass guilds, all the way to today's digital reclamation, really shows us that history isn't just about what was built or even what was lost. It's about how we choose to remember, rebuild, and reconnect. I highly encourage you to go explore the Digital Benin catalog for yourselves. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.